Admiral Korthik stared at the chaos surrounding his flagship. In less than an hour, his perfect conquest fleet had become a rebellion against everything the Zephyrian Empire represented. Ships that should have been destroying Earth were now protecting it, the communication channels filled with voices he had not heard in years. Enslaved crews were talking to each other in their native languages for the first time since being captured. Children were speaking to parents they had been separated from decades ago. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from our remaining loyal ships." His second-in-command reported through their telepathic link. "The crew commanders are asking for mercy." Korthik felt the weight of 500 years of Zephyrian expansion crashing down on him. Every conquered world, every enslaved population, every act of cruelty had led to this moment. The Empire had built itself on a foundation of suffering, and now that foundation was crumbling. Captain Ryan Blake's voice came through the speakers again, calm and certain. "Admiral, your time is up. What is your decision?" Korthik looked around. His bridge at the treasures he had collected from dead civilizations, artwork from destroyed worlds, weapons from defeated armies, and monuments to his own cruelty stared back at him. For the first time in his life, he felt shame. The quantum torpedo had shown him what real power looked like. The liberation pulse had revealed what true strength meant. Humanity had not just superior technology, they had superior values. They fought to free the enslaved, not to create more slaves. Korthik began, then stopped. The words felt foreign in his mouth. No Zephyrian admiral had ever spoken them before. "I surrender." The Zephyrian Empire surrenders unconditionally. The announcement went out across all frequencies, broadcast to every ship in the system and beyond. The mighty empire that had ruled 47 star systems for centuries had been brought to its knees by a single human vessel. Commander Jake Morrison aboard the UES Defender watched in amazement as enemy ships powered down their weapons. The battle he had thought was hopeless had become a complete victory without his ships firing a single shot. "Sir, we're receiving messages from liberated colonies across the galaxy," Lieutenant Lisa Carter reported. "Word is spreading that the Empire has fallen. Enslaved populations are rising up everywhere." Ryan Blake stood on his bridge, feeling the weight of 2 centuries lifting from his shoulders. The long sleep had been worth it. Humanity's gamble had paid off. The quantum technology had evolved beyond their wildest dreams, becoming a tool of liberation for the entire galaxy. "Dr. Wells, begin broadcasting the liberation frequency to all Zephyrian territories," Ryan ordered. "Every slave caller, every control device, every tool of oppression needs to be shut down." Amy Wells smiled as she worked at her console. The quantum technology could now reach across interstellar distances, carrying freedom to worlds that had been enslaved for generations. "Broadcasting now, sir. Estimated coverage. All Empire territories within 72 hours. The effect would be unprecedented. Across dozens of star systems, billions of enslaved beings would suddenly find themselves free. The technological chains that had bound them for centuries would simply stop working. Ben Parker was already plotting courses to the nearest occupied worlds. "Sir, I recommend we begin liberation operations immediately. The freed populations will need protection while they organize their new governments." Ryan nodded. The quantum forge had been designed not just as a weapon of war, but as a symbol of hope. Every enslaved species would see that freedom was possible, that their oppressors could be defeated. "Open a channel to all liberated ships," Ryan commanded. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species were now orbiting Earth. Former enemies had become allies in the fight against tyranny. The diversity of the fleet was beautiful. Crystal ships from Altair, bioorganic vessels from the vegan colonies, and sleek human destroyers all flying together. "This is Captain Blake," Ryan announced. Today marks the end of the Zephyrian Empire and the beginning of a new age of freedom. But our work is not finished. Billions of beings across the galaxy still live in chains. Will you help us break those chains? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every ship captain, every crew member, every newly freed slave wanted to join the Liberation Fleet. They had suffered under Zephyrian rule for too long. Now they had the power to fight back. Nina Price was already planning the next phase of operations. Sir, our quantum weapons can disable Empire technology across entire star systems. We could liberate dozens of worlds simultaneously. The strategic possibilities were endless. The Quantum Forge had become more than a warship. It was a tool for reshaping the galaxy. Every enslaved world could be freed. Every oppressed population could be liberated. Admiral Peter Knox opened communications from his flagship. The old man's eyes were bright with tears of joy. Captain Blake, on behalf of humanity, thank you. You've given us back our future. Ryan smiled at his old friend. Admiral, the future belongs to all of us now. Humans, Eltarians, vegans, and every other free species. We're stronger together than we ever were apart. The Liberation Fleet began forming up for departure to the nearest enslaved worlds. The Quantum Forge would lead them, carrying the promise of freedom to every corner of the galaxy. A ghost ship had returned not just to save humanity, but to save everyone. Korthik sat in his command chair, stripped of his weapons and authority. The human captain had shown him mercy, allowing him to live despite his crimes. It was more kindness than he had ever shown to his victims. Captain Blake. Korthik transmitted on a private channel. Why did you spare us? My people have caused so much suffering. Ryan's response was thoughtful and sad. Because someone has to break the cycle of revenge, Admiral. Your empire is finished, but your people can choose a different path. Learn from this defeat. Build something better. As the Liberation Fleet departed for the stars, Earth's children looked up at the sky with hope for the first time in years. A war was over, but the real work was just beginning. A galaxy of enslaved beings was waiting for freedom, and humanity would help deliver it. The legend of the Quantum Forge had become reality. The ghost ship had returned, bringing with it the promise that no matter how dark things became, freedom would always find a way. The universe would never be the same. Captain Ryan Blake stood calmly on his bridge as 800 enemy ships pointed their weapons at him. His crew was ready. A quantum forge had been built for this exact moment, to face impossible odds and prove that humanity would never surrender. Open a channel to all enemy vessels, Ryan commanded. His voice was steady and confident. He had spent 2 centuries preparing for this. Conversation. The communication system connected him to every ship in the Zephyrian fleet. His image appeared on bridges throughout the formation. Alien faces stared back at him with mixtures of fear, anger, and disbelief. Ryan spoke in perfect Zephyrian, his pronunciation flawless. I am Captain Ryan Blake of the USS Quantum Forge. You know the stories about this ship. Today you will learn that every word was true. The enemy admiral responded with typical Zephyrian arrogance. 1 ship against our entire fleet? You humans are even more foolish than we remembered. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Ryan smiled coldly. You want proof of our capabilities? Very well. Commander Price, target the outermost dreadnought with a level 1 quantum torpedo. Minimum power setting. Nina Price's fingers moved across her weapons console. The quantum torpedo system had been charging for centuries, building energy from folded space-time itself. The weapon that launched would demonstrate technology beyond the enemy's understanding. Target locked, sir, Nina reported. Quantum torpedo ready for launch. Fire. The weapon that left the quantum forge looked like a small star. It pulsed with contained energy that made space bend and twist around it. The torpedo moved slowly, giving everyone time to see exactly what was about to happen. The Zephyrian dreadnought tried to defend itself. Energy shields flared to maximum power. Point defense weapons fired desperately at the approaching star. Nothing worked. The quantum torpedo passed through their shields like they did not exist. When the weapon struck, the result was beyond anything the aliens had ever seen. The massive dreadnought did not explode in fire and metal. Instead, it simply stopped existing. The quantum torpedo had torn apart the fundamental forces holding the ship's atoms together. One moment, there was a crystal vessel 3 miles long. The next moment, there was empty space. No debris, no radiation, no evidence that the ship had ever been built. 8,000 Zephyrian crew members had been converted to harmless energy in an instant. Silence filled the communication channels. The enemy fleet sat frozen in shock, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Their most advanced shields and armor had been completely useless against a weapon that attacked reality itself. Dr. Amy Wells monitored the alien communications as panic spread through their formations. "Sir, they're detecting quantum signatures they've never seen before. Their scientists are calling it impossible." Ryan nodded grimly. The quantum forge carried weapons based on principles that most civilizations never discovered. Matter manipulation, temporal displacement, and reality alteration were tools that required centuries of careful research. Lieutenant Parker, scan the enemy fleet for enslaved crews. Ryan ordered. Ben Parker's navigation sensors could detect different species aboard the enemy ships. The results were heartbreaking. Humans, Alterians, vegans, and dozens of other intelligent races were forced to serve aboard Zephyrian vessels. "Sir, I'm reading enslaved crews on over 300 ships," Ben reported. "They're using our own people as weapons against us." Ryan's expression hardened. The Zephyrians had not just been conquering worlds. They had been building an army of slaves, turning their victims into tools of oppression. Children who had never known freedom were forced to fight their own species. "Time for Phase 2, Ryan announced. "Dr. Wells, prepare a targeted quantum burst. I want every control collar, every neural implant, every form of technological slavery disabled simultaneously." Amy Wells looked up from her console with excitement. "Sir, the quantum field generators have evolved beyond our original specifications. We can now affect technology on a molecular level across vast distances." The second quantum torpedo that launched from their ship was different from the first. Instead of pure destruction, this weapon carried liberation encoded into its quantum structure. The torpedo headed for empty space near the center of the enemy formation. When it detonated, the effect was invisible but immediate. A wave of quantum energy spread outward from the explosion point, passing harmlessly through ship hulls and biological tissue. But every technological device designed to control or enslave simply stopped working. Across 300 enemy vessels, control collars fell from alien necks. Neural implants that had been suppressing free will shut down permanently. Shock devices that had enforced obedience became inert metal. Centuries of technological slavery ended in a single moment. The result was immediate chaos throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Enslaved crews who had been forced to serve the Empire for generations suddenly remembered who they really were. Humans, Alterians, vegans, and dozens of other species found themselves free for the first time in their lives. Commander Jake Morrison, watching from his own ship, could hardly believe what he was seeing. "Sir, the enslaved crews are taking control of their vessels. They're turning their weapons on the Zephyrians." The enemy formation collapsed as ship after ship changed sides. Families that had been separated by conquest were reunited in the middle of battle. Children who had been brainwashed into serving the Empire remembered their true heritage. Ryan opened communications to all the newly freed ships. "This is Captain Blake of the USS Quantum Forge. You are now free. Will you stand with us against your former masters?" The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of voices in dozens of languages answered with joy, gratitude, and determination. Former slaves who had lost everything were finally able to fight back against their oppressors. Admiral Korthake watched his perfect fleet dissolve into rebellion and chaos. More than half his ships were now under enemy control. The humans had done more than demonstrate superior firepower. They had turned the Empire's greatest strength into its ultimate weakness. "Impossible," Korthik transmitted. "How did they free so many slaves so quickly?" Ryan's image appeared on the Zephyrian flagship's main screen. His gray eyes were cold as winter steel. "You mistake mercy for weakness. You mistake freedom for foolishness. Now you will learn the price of building your empire on the suffering of others." The newly liberated fleet began forming up around the Quantum Forge. Ships that had been enemies moments before now flew together as allies. The symbol of human resistance had become the rally point for every enslaved species in the galaxy. "Last chance, Admiral," Ryan said calmly. "Surrender unconditionally or face the consequences of your choices." Fleet Admiral Korthak had conquered more worlds than any Zephyrian in history. His crystal exoskeleton was decorated with the bones of defeated enemies. Each marking told the story of another species that had fallen before the Empire's might. Bridge of his flagship was filled with the captured treasures of a dozen civilizations. Art, weapons, and technology from conquered worlds decorated the walls like hunting trophies. Korthak took pride in displaying what remained of dead cultures. His telepathic connection to the fleet allowed him to feel the emotions of every ship. "Commander." Usually there was confidence and bloodlust. Today, something different filled the mental network. Fear was spreading like a virus through his perfect formation. "Report," Korthak commanded through the psychic link. His science officer, a young Zephyrian named Veltar, sent back waves of confusion and terror. The emotional response was so strong that Korthik almost stepped backward. Zephyrians rarely felt fear. They were bred to be fearless conquerors. The impossible ship hung in space before them like a nightmare made real. Korthik's sensors could barely understand what they were seeing. The vessel seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, phasing in and out of visible reality. The hull appeared to be made of liquid metal that flowed like water but remained solid. Energy readings suggested power output that exceeded entire solar systems. Most disturbing were the weapons signatures, configurations that their computers labeled as theoretically impossible and civilization ending. Korthik accessed the Empire's historical database through his neural implant. The records went back 500 years, documenting every conquest and victory. But there was one chapter that few Zephyrians liked to remember. 2 centuries ago, their expansion had been stopped by a single human vessel. The ship had appeared during their first serious attempt to invade Earth's solar system. At that time, the Empire was smaller but still powerful. They had sent 50 dreadnoughts to crush humanity's home world. The battle had lasted 6 hours. When it was over, only 7 Zephyrian ships remained functional. The mysterious human vessel had destroyed 3 entire battle groups without taking any visible damage. Then it had vanished into folded space, leaving behind a message that haunted military planners. "Your empire ends here, unless you change your ways. We have shown mercy today, but if you continue on this path of conquest and slavery, we will return when you least expect it. Next time, we will not be so kind." The warning had been dismissed as human arrogance. Humans were primitive, barely capable of space travel. How could they possibly threaten the mighty Zephyrian Empire? The defeat was explained away as a lucky accident. a one-time event that would never happen again. But the Empire had been more careful after that day. They avoided Earth and focused on easier targets. Slowly, over 200 years, they had grown stronger and braver. Eventually, they convinced themselves that the ghost ship was just a myth. Now, as Korthik stared at the legendary vessel, he understood the terrible truth. Humanity had not been defeated 2 centuries ago. They had been showing restraint. The Empire had been allowed to grow strong so that their eventual defeat would be more complete. Analysis of their weapon systems, Korthak demanded. Veltar's response came as pure terror mixed with scientific data. The human ship's weapons worked on principles that Zephyrian science had never discovered. They could manipulate matter at the quantum level, bend space and time, and alter the fundamental forces that held reality together. Sir, their smallest weapons could destroy our largest ships, Veltar reported through the mental link. Their largest weapons could destroy entire fleets, planets, maybe even stars. Korthik felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. For his entire life, he had been taught that the Zephyrian Empire was supreme. Their technology was the best, their warriors were unbeatable, and their destiny was to rule the galaxy. Human Captain's message came through the communication system. The man spoke perfect Zephyrian High Command dialect, as if he had been born speaking their language. His face was calm and confident, showing no fear despite being outnumbered 1,000 to 1. I am Captain Ryan Blake of the USS Quantum Forge. 200 years ago, we gave your empire a warning. You chose to ignore it. Korthik remembered the stories told by his grandfather, who had been a young officer during the first invasion attempt. The old Zephyrian had described the human captain who had appeared on their screens, a man with gray eyes and a voice like steel. This was the same person. After 200 years, he had not aged at all. Whatever technology the humans possessed, it had kept their greatest warrior young and ready for battle. Impossible, Korthik whispered. He should be dead. The human continued speaking, his words carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Your legends are about to become reality. Surrender now, or learn why humanity has survived every threat the universe has thrown at us. Other fleet commanders began sending panicked messages through the telepathic network. They were remembering the old stories, the warnings that had been passed down through generations of Zephyrian officers. The ghost ship was real, and it had returned to finish what it started. Korthik tried to maintain his confidence. His fleet had over 800 ships. They controlled dozens of star systems. Billions of enslaved beings served the Empire across the galaxy. How could one human vessel, no matter how advanced, defeat such overwhelming numbers? But deep in his mind, doubt grew stronger. The Empire's expansion had been built on conquering weaker civilizations. They had never faced an enemy with superior technology. Every victory had come from having better weapons and larger fleets. What happened when they met someone stronger? The human ship's weapons began to charge with energy that made space itself glow. Korthik's instruments screamed warnings as power levels climbed beyond anything they could measure. The ghost ship was preparing to demonstrate exactly what 200 years of advancement could accomplish. All ships, battle formation, Korthik ordered, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Prepare for engagement. The crystal dreadnoughts moved into attack position, their own weapons powering up. 800 ships against 1. The numbers should have been reassuring. Instead, Korthik found himself praying to gods he had stopped believing in long ago. Captain Ryan Blake opened his eyes for the first time in 217 years. The world around him was soft and blue, like being underwater. Machines hummed quietly, keeping him alive while he slept in quantum space. His body felt strange and heavy, Every muscle ached as he tried to move. The sleep pod around him was filled with a thick liquid that had kept his cells from aging. Tubes and wires connected to his skin, feeding his body and monitoring his dreams. Ryan was 45 years old when he had entered the sleep pod. Now he was still 45, but the universe around him had aged centuries. Time had moved differently. In the folded space where his ship had hidden, the artificial intelligence called Aria appeared next to his bed. She looked like a woman made of light, with kind eyes and a worried expression. Aria had been awake the entire time, watching over the sleeping crew and monitoring the outside world. "Welcome back, Captain," Aria said softly. "I am sorry to wake you, but humanity needs you." Other sleep pods around the bridge began to open. His crew was waking up, coughing and gasping as they breathed real air again. Commander Nina Price was his second in command, a tough woman with red hair and quick reflexes. Lieutenant Ben Parker handled navigation, a young man who could plot courses through the most dangerous space. Dr. Amy Wells was the scientist who had helped design their incredible technology. Ryan sat up slowly, his head spinning. The ship felt different somehow, more powerful. The quantum technology had been growing stronger during their long sleep, feeding on energy from folded spacetime. "Status report," Ryan said. His voice was rough and dry. He had not spoken for over 2 centuries. Aria's face became sad. "Captain, we have returned to find humanity facing extinction. The Zephyrian Empire has grown beyond our worst fears. They now control 47 star systems. Earth is surrounded and about to fall." The main screen turned on, showing the battle. Outside, Ryan saw the massive alien fleet surrounding the last human ships. The crystal vessels of the Zephyrians gleamed like deadly jewelry against the stars. Each one could destroy cities with single shots. Ryan felt anger burn in his chest. When he had left, the Zephyrians were just starting to expand beyond their home world. They were cruel but small. Now they had become a plague across the galaxy, enslaving and destroying everything they touched. "How many human worlds are left?" Ryan asked. 17 colonies remain, plus Earth," Aria answered. "The Empire has destroyed or captured everything. Else, billions of humans are dead or enslaved." Nina Price finished getting out of her sleep pod. She was the weapons expert, the person who understood how to turn quantum science into tools of war. Her fingers moved across her control panel, checking systems that had been charging for centuries. "Captain, all weapons are online," she reported. "Quantum torpedo bays are loaded. Temporal displacement cannons are ready. Reality anchor systems are at full power." Ben Parker was checking their position and movement. His job was to navigate through normal space and quantum dimensions. The ship could move in ways that other vessels could not understand. "Sir, we're in perfect position," Ben said. "The enemy fleet is arranged exactly as our computers predicted. They have no idea what kind of technology we possess." Dr. Amy Wells looked at the energy readings from their weapons. She had spent 10 years before their departure perfecting systems that could manipulate the basic forces of the universe. Matter, energy, time, and space could all be controlled by their advanced science. "Captain, the quantum field generators have evolved during our sleep," Amy reported with excitement. "Our weapons are now 3 times more powerful than when we left. We can do things that should be impossible." Ryan stood up and walked to the captain's chair. It felt good to be in command again, even though the situation was desperate. His ship was humanity's secret weapon, built in hiding while the government prepared for war. The Quantum Forge had cost more money than any project in human history. The best scientists had worked for decades to create technology that could fight enemies with superior numbers. Instead of building 1,000 normal ships, they had built one impossible ship. "Show me their fleet composition," Ryan ordered. The screen displayed detailed information about each enemy vessel. The Zephyrians had learned to use enslaved crews from conquered species. Humans, Altarians, vegan colonists, and dozens of other intelligent races were forced to fight for their masters. Ryan's jaw tightened. The aliens were not just conquering, they were turning their victims into weapons. Families were separated, children were brainwashed, and entire cultures were destroyed. To feed the Empire's war machine. They're using our own people against us, Nina said with disgust. Not for much longer, Ryan replied. He had spent years planning for this moment. The Quantum Forge was not just a warship. It was a tool of liberation designed to free the enslaved and punish the oppressors. The alien commander was demanding answers about their ship. Radio messages filled with threats and demands came from the crystal vessels. The Zephyrians wanted to know what the strange ship was and where it had come from. Ryan smiled for the first time in centuries. Open a channel to the enemy fleet, he ordered. It's time to introduce ourselves. Arya established communication links with the alien vessels. Ryan's image would appear on every enemy bridge, letting them see the face of their judgment. I am Captain Ryan Blake of the USS Quantum Forge, he said in perfect Zephyrian language. 200 years ago, we gave your empire a warning. You chose to ignore it. The response was immediate. Alien voices filled with anger and disbelief came through the speakers. They remembered the stories of a human ship that had appeared and vanished during their first invasion attempts. Most had thought it was just a legend. Your legends are about to become reality, Ryan continued. Surrender now, or learn why humanity has survived every threat the universe has thrown at us. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship. His hands gripped the metal rail as he watched the screens. The last human ships were running away from Earth. They carried families, children, and old people. Everyone was scared. The enemy ships filled the space around Earth like angry wasps. The Zephyrian Empire had finally come to finish what they started long ago. Their ships looked like giant crystals that could cut through planets. Each one was bigger than a city. Jake had been fighting these aliens for 3 years. Every battle ended the same way. More human ships destroyed, more colonies lost, more friends dead. Now they were at Earth, and there was nowhere left to run. Lieutenant Lisa Carter sat at her desk covered in blinking lights. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair. Her job was watching the sensors that told them what was happening in space. Right now, those sensors were showing something very strange. Sir, something weird is happening near Jupiter, Lisa said. Her voice shook a little. She had seen many battles, but this was different. The space there is ... moving. Jake walked over to look at her screen. The numbers made no sense. Space itself was bending and twisting like water. Blue and white light danced in the darkness between the stars. It looked beautiful and scary at the same time. Admiral Peter Knox was the oldest man on the bridge. His gray hair and wrinkled face showed the weight of command. He had fought aliens before, when he was young like Jake. Back then, humanity had won some fights. Now they only lost. Peter knew stories that most people had forgotten. Stories told in quiet corners of military schools. Stories about a ship that had vanished 200 years ago. The ship was called the USS Quantum Forge. It had been testing new technology that could bend space and time. The ship had disappeared during humanity's first war with hostile aliens. One day it was there. The next day it was gone. Only strange. Radiation remained. Some people said the ship had been destroyed. Others said it had gone somewhere else, somewhere beyond normal space. The alien commander's voice came through the speakers. The sound was cold and sharp, like breaking glass. A machine translated the words into English. Your kind has lived long enough. Give up now, and some of you might live as our slaves. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. These aliens had destroyed dozens of human worlds. They had killed billions of people. Men, women, children. It did not matter to them. They wanted to own everything in the galaxy. The strange readings from Jupiter were getting stronger. Lisa's instruments were going crazy. Numbers flashed on and off. Warning sounds filled the bridge. Something very big was coming. Sir, whatever is happening out there, it's huge, Lisa said. She pressed buttons and typed commands, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The energy levels are off the charts. Through the twisted space near Jupiter, something began to appear. At first, it was just a shadow, like looking at something underwater. Then it became more solid. The shape was long and sleek, like a knife. Made of liquid metal, the ship that came out of folded space was enormous. It stretched for miles, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Its hull seemed to move and flow, reflecting light in impossible ways. Sometimes it looked solid. Sometimes it looked like a ghost. Old identification codes began transmitting from the mystery ship. The signals were weak but readable. Jake's computer systems recognized the pattern immediately. His face went white as he read the name on his screen. USS Quantum Forge, he whispered. Admiral Peter Knox felt his heart skip a beat. The legend was real. The ghost ship had returned at humanity's darkest hour. But after 200 years, what would they find inside? Were there still humans aboard, or just empty metal floating in space? The Zephyrian fleet had noticed the new arrival. Their crystal ships began to turn, pointing their weapons at the strange vessel. The alien commander sent another message, demanding to know what the ship was and where it had come from. No answer came from the Quantum Forge. It hung in space like a sleeping giant, its hull rippling with energies that human science barely understood. The ship's presence changed everything. The hopeless battle suddenly felt different. Jake thought about all the stories he had heard as a child. Stories of human heroes who saved the day when everything seemed lost. Stories of secret weapons and hidden strengths. He had stopped believing in such things after watching so many friends die. But now, looking at the impossible ship that had emerged from quantum space, he began to hope again. Maybe humanity had one more card to play. Maybe the war was not over yet. The alien deadline was 30 minutes away. If humanity did not surrender by then, the Zephyrians would begin destroying Earth. Every major city would be turned to glass. Every ocean would boil away. Nothing would survive. The Quantum Forge drifted closer to the battle zone. Its weapons were hidden, its intentions unknown. 200 years of silence were about to end. The ghost ship had returned, and with it came the possibility of salvation or doom. Jake ordered his remaining ships to hold their positions. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The last defenders of Earth watched and waited as the legendary warship prepared to reveal its secrets.